Hi, my name is Kristiana Chan. These are the works that I did for the quiz workshop. I didn't so much answer the question, if you had a place of your own, what would it be directly. For me, it was really important to kind of like understand the mechanisms of like that were happening in my family, in my lineage, in my ancestry, in my heritage. So I approached the project as kind of like an investigative, like personal piece, kind of like going back into like old family archives. So what I did was I looked, I guess I should tell you a bit of backstory about me. I am the daughter of Malaysian Chinese immigrants. So my parents grew up in Malaysia, and all of my extended family is there. I grew up in Canada and North Carolina. So my parents immigrated to Canada, and then when I was 10, we moved to North Carolina, which was a huge cultural shock. And so I kind of always grew up with this like really like fraught like racial identity. I didn't really know where I was from. I remember having a fight with my mom when I was like, I thought I was 5, she told me I was 2. Having this like really, really intense, like I remember feeling so angry about this because she was trying to explain to me, this is when we were still in Canada, she was trying to explain to me that yes, like you are Canadian by birth, but by blood you are Chinese and Malaysian. And I just remember being a child, like so young, and just being like, no, like I'm not, like you can't tell, like I just felt that like the horror of being misidentified. And that was kind of a theme that like carried me throughout my like until like my young adult years. Just feeling like misidentified, mislabeled, like didn't really know like how to claim where I was from. So this is all part of that process. So growing up, there were a few things that a few vivid memories of what like traditional practices that we practice as a family. One of them was like the exchange of Ang Pau, which is a East Asian, Southeast Asian practice of exchanging money in red envelopes on Chinese New Year. And it's a practice that it's like something that you receive as a child from elders and from married folks, so people that are older than you. So growing up, it's always a thing for children to receive from the generation above them. So I wanted to use the Ang Pau as like a metaphor for like the things that we receive from the generation before us. So I took it out of the like money context and wanted to talk more about like cultural values. So like taking like cultural currency and making it about that. And I did that through looking through the lens of like memory and like family photos, because that's really all I have from like as like evidence of where I come from. So I started this process of going back and looking through old family photographs and asking questions and trying to see what I remembered. So this is kind of the product of that. I used the Ang Pau, like I made these envelopes out of vellum, which is like a semi-transparent paper. And I wanted you to be able to like see through it, but also not completely. So there's this sort of like, there's like an opacity that like happens through memory over time that gets kind of lost over generations. So I wanted to kind of speak to that through like the form of the envelopes. The color red is also really important. It's a very auspicious color in Chinese culture. But it's also, some of the other women have talked about the color of rootedness, and that was something that was a really big point of development for me in the class, was how to feel rooted when I like had no real concept of where I'd come from. It's like all these gaps and trying to fill them in with memories. So each of the pieces kind of speaks to a different aspect of that process. This is a picture of me receiving Ang Pau from my grandma at Chinese New Year in 1999. And I replicated the photo like again and again to kind of like speak to like the repetition over generations and generations of the like reception of whatever, of Ang Pau, of traumas, of practices, of cultural beliefs and values through generations, and this piece is called Inheritance. This one kind of has, inside of the envelope has slips of paper that say, do you remember where you are from? And the response being, no, I do not remember where I'm from. So in English, translated directly back into Chinese, and then back into English, so there's a sort of like lost in translation happening through the slips of paper. So it's both like contained in the envelope, but also woven through the character ji, which means memory or to remember in Chinese. Let's see, what else? I don't want to talk about all of them. This one is a piece, the character is Jia, which means like family. But I looked at the form of the character and saw roots, but also branches of a tree. So I wrote the names of my family as like kind of like a reference to the practice that we did of mapping our family patterns, and I kind of wove it through the character as well. And that character shows up again in this piece. So both of these characters together mean going home. The first one says 回家, which means like to go home, but the character is to go to family. And the bottom character says 回国, which means like to go back to like the land that you come from. And that was always a really difficult thing for me to answer when people asked me, where do you come from? Like I knew that they were asking for a country or a place, and I couldn't really give them a land because my family has moved continents and countries every generation for the last 4 or 5 generations. So I felt again like this sense of like deep rootlessness that I've always like felt and embodied, but didn't really understand why. And so looking back through like my family and understanding how I received those things as an inheritance really helped me like cast myself in like a larger narrative arc of what was happening, and how I received that and how I experienced that in everyday life. But yeah, I don't want to talk for too long, so if you have any questions, you can ask me after. Thank you so much for coming and for listening.